Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Always Online. My name is Brendan Lotz, and joining me today is Louis Monzon.
Hey, guys.
And filling in for Robin Lee Chetty this week is the mythical Clinton Matos.
I do exist. I haven't died.
Highly
yet.
lauded.
Highly lauded.
I will eventually, but
So, if you're wondering where Robin is, he's unfortunately ill, got a bit of con flu after attending AWS Ignite, is it?
something like
I
that.
think it was that.
In Vegas.
In Las Vegas. We're very jealous, but we wish him all the best in getting
I
better.
need to see his video that he recorded of the Sphere. Apparently, he said it's like $100 to go to that.
Yeah.
Flipping
Very
out.
affordable.
I know they're like billions of dollars in debt, but $100, my lord.
You have to earn that back somehow.
Yeah. So, as it is the end of 2023, we thought that we'd look at some of the biggest news of the year in review and just go through that and take a look at some of the stories, just discuss them very briefly, and just talk about the internet.
Yeah. Some of the things that got people clicking and talking and
Yeah.
angry and shouting. And
We'll start with the thing that got me angriest, is that Twitter became X.
You know what really grinds my gears? It's so funny because in that disastrous interview that elongated Musk did, he called it Twitter, like through the whole thing. I didn't watch that whole interview, but did he call it X once? I don't think he did.
I think he did like once when somebody said, "Oh, when you tweet," and he said, "Oh, post." But X came into being earlier this year, not through an official announcement. It was actually discovered in a court filing that
Best
was
place
sponsored
to
by
discover.
Slate all the way back in April. And then a few months after that, I think it was in September, it officially became X, even though you can still go to www.twitter.com to find it. And X is basically the signal that Elon Musk wanted to build the Everything app. So that's what we now have, the Everything app. Although it's not really everything, is it?
not yet, at least.
Well, I mean, if you rage bait enough, you might get paid. So that's in everything that it does now. I mean, it wasn't there before.
It has brought the quality of content on Twitter down significantly.
So down. And I think we're going to talk about it in terms of adverts. It just feels like the sketchiest thing in the world. Not only does it sound like a porn site now that it's called X and X videos, but now all the adverts are super sketchy things where if I tap on the wrong advert, I'm going to get a trillion viruses.
I mean, the extent of all the things that have gone wrong with the platform over the last year. I mean, how many articles have we written about all the terrible
so
things
many.
and all
well,
the
thankfully,
bad
I've written
ideas?
0.
But yeah, it has been. It's just been a comedy of errors, really. Like, I think in February, Musk announced that ad revenue sharing would be coming to Twitter, like this month, and then it only arrived in June. And unfortunately for Musk and X, they had to backpay all the creators that were eligible for this program because they announced that it was happening in February. We now have various subscription tiers for Twitter.
Yeah. From
Twitter
users
Blue.
to businesses to...
And there's even separate ones below that. So you now have a basic tier, which gives you just like a blue tick, I guess. You have a premium, and then you have premium plus, which is double the price with only one additional feature, which is an extra boost. You now have Grok, which is an AI that has boomer humor, and that's it really, based off of Hitchhiker's Guide to the
that real?
Galaxy.
Is that
I mean,
real?
I don't actually know what
Is it real?
It is real. Oh, I don't know what.
I don't know,
What do you mean
eh?
by is it real? Because it doesn't seem like it does anything useful except make terrible jokes.
I think it's. I think a lot of the whole Grok thing, and we're going to talk about AI a bit later. But the whole Grok thing is a little bit of a. I don't want to say a publicity stunt, but it's kind of like, look, we're also looking at AI.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're not being left out, guys. Promise.
Well, it
It's
feels
sort of like another thing we'll talk about is like the Web3 sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
It feels like, hey, we're also in the AI space.
Yeah.
But so the reason I ask about Grok is like when ChatGPT was released onto the public about like a year ago at this point, people were showing like how it could be used to do cool stuff. Like, oh, I gave it like 5 ingredients in my fridge and it gave me like 10 ideas for meals to make for dinner. Oh, I fed it this data and it showed me the best way to take action on it. Whereas I feel like Grok is just like, Oh, I have some humor that references
That's
Hitchhiker's
literally-
Guide to
that's
the
literally it.
Galaxy.
So-
I hate my wife.
So ChatGPT would be like, I mean, and it's only gotten, I don't want to say worse, but maybe better. Like all the things you can do with it, all the coding and all the
Yeah.
stuff, all the, people have been highlighting and showcasing all the
apps that are coming.
all the incredible things that and things that make you go, damn, that's nuts,
Yeah.
Meanwhile, what we get for Grok is like, oh, it kind of insulted this one guy.
You know how
the swear.
Yeah.
You know, our problem with ChatGPT was for a long time, it could only recall information from a few years ago because that's the data was trained. And as they've gone on, they've trained it on new data and everything. It feels like the Grok has been like, we've now updated its comedy to the 1980s. Congratulations, everyone. We can talk about Reaganomics.
I think this segues into the more pertinent topic, which is the battle of the AIs.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, we had ChatGPT, which launched late last year. In November 2022. We've had a year with it now, and as you mentioned, Louis, it's seen improvements in leaps and bounds. You have GPT Plus or ChatGPT Plus, which gives you premium access, priority access, and then access to features as they arrive. Which I think is really cool.
Also, not too expensive. It's like $20 a month, I believe.
And I mean, if you're using ChatGPT, I think that's $20 well spent. But then we also had Google, which debuted its Bard chatbot.
Yeah. So it's quite crazy because so OpenAI drops ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Microsoft looks at ChatGPT and they lose their mind. They absolutely lose their minds.
$10 million.
And, they drop billions upon OpenAI, right? They want the generative models to power their own stuff. And we got Bing AI, all that stuff.
Yes.
As this is happening, the Google boardroom is in abject meltdown because they've missed out on the big piece of cake that is generative AI. So now the Google guys tell the poor they have the small, So Google at this point, they were doing their stuff, but the AI divisions, DeepMind and whatever, they were just chilling. They were doing a few things here and there, and
enjoying the meals.
They were just having their coffee, and then all of a sudden the door gets like flattened, and they're like, okay, what? Let's rock and roll, guys. We need some stuff on here now. So then Google rushes to drop Bard.
Yeah.
And it's a flop immediately. Like in the demos, the Bard is getting things wrong in the demos, and then Google loses millions just from that, right?
Yeah.
And then now the race is on. Who can get the biggest, best AI thing out there? And it's all over the world. It's not just Microsoft. It's not just Google. Google. Talking about Google, they just recently released yesterday their latest and greatest AI thing, Gemini, right? But it's not just these companies, not just in the US. I mean, China is looking at, Baidu and Alibaba, Amazon, everyone's looking at
Spotify.
AI. Everybody and their grandmother is looking. Grammarly have an AI thing.
Yeah, it's
where it can
ridiculous.
write-
Let me tell you guys, right? We're talking about it from the other side. I've had some experience with the corporate side. So if you're wondering where I've been, I've been covering more corporate side of things, not to get too deep into it, but let me tell you, if you go to a webinar, I hope you like hearing about AI for 6 hours straight. I cannot tell you, how can I say this diplomatically? I cannot tell you how entrenched this idea of AI is at every level of the corporate ideals. The executives want it like they want the Christmas present under the tree. I cannot tell you how ravenous they are.
What is their goal with it though? Because
It's literally like the present under the tree. It's the new toy. I really don't think there's anything besides that. And when you speak to the engineers and the people who actually do this work, they're very much more measured about their excitement or what they're doing with it. And then you speak to somebody who makes the decisions and they just breathless praise. AI is going to do everything. I think it's the first thing in a long time where there's such a disconnect between the public's perception of what it is and the people who are on the ground level doing it. It's crazy out there, guys.
So something that I have noticed is that with all this fervor around AI, we seem to have forgotten that AI has been around for a very long time in our day-to-day lives. So if you look at something like Google Maps, or Waze is a better example, right? Waze uses AI to map out the best route for you, the shortest or the least time route. So we've had AI for many years. And I mean, things like the YouTube algorithm, you could argue, is artificial intelligence, like the way it suggests content to you. We've had AI in applications for many years, but I think what ChatGPT and Bard and all of these things did is they made it more accessible to the everyman, right? It's like, hey, you can use this powerful technology as well, whether it's for making artwork, which is another kettle of fish that we saw coming out this year, where artists are increasingly trying to protect their stuff from the likes of OpenAI.
From theft. We can just use the word theft and uncredited and unpaid work. Sorry.
So, I mean, there are some cool ways that AI can be applied, but when I sit down and think of it from a business solution, right? Like let's say you employ AI to find inefficiencies in your supply chain. That's a once-off thing. It's not really something that you're going to continuously use. You might use it once every 6 months or so, but it's not like a Slack or Gmail or Microsoft 365. It's not something that you're going to be using every day, which is where I kind of just, when people talk about, the AI revolution, I'm sort of like, okay, but is there really? I feel like a lot of it is hype.
A lot of it is hype. At the beginning of the year, Bill Gates, he dropped an open letter, basically saying that. So he was among the first people that Sam Altman and the OpenAI guys took ChatGPT to, and to show off what the capabilities are. And he said that he likened the innovation of generative AI and large language models to the creation of the internet. He said that, so obviously that can be debated, but there's, we start seeing the seeds of this insane hype around, AI.
There are some cool things that can be done. Like, I just use the free versions of a lot of these apps because I don't want to invest tons of money into them. And like, they are cool and they can do some cool things, but am I using them every day? I mean, there was a week where I was like, how can ChatGPT help me hone headlines a bit? But then eventually it just becomes, I don't want another ChatGPT written headline. And you can tell when it's ChatGPT, when it's written by ChatGPT.
I think, you know what? I think the biggest impact right now isn't how strong it is. It's that it's convincing people that you need it to do anything. Like, I know people, we can straw man here a little bit, who are like, I can't just write this business email. I need to run it through ChatGPT first. It's like, why? And on the one hand, that's like regular human doubt or whatever. But it's the fact that this company who's making the money is like, no, you need us to write a business email. So, you need us to look at your resume. It's like, you don't really... But yeah, sorry, Louis.
No, I was going to add to that. It just gets scary. We were at the Salesforce event in Johannesburg earlier this year, and they were showing off their newest Einstein AI. So Salesforce uses OpenAI's models. They have an agreement with OpenAI. So basically, they're using ChatGPT, and they were just showing off this the new marketing system that they have, where basically you can. So an office worker who kind of is running the support for a website, right? Instead of doing the support by themselves, they have to chat with the customer and all that stuff. Now they basically they get reduced to a button clicker, right? They all they do is input prompts into the AI window, and the AI basically does all their work for them, right? So I mean. Going from there, at least me looking at this, I was in the audience. And the first thing I was thinking is like, this is gonna get people fired. Teams are gonna go from 10 people to maybe 3 people because they can do the same amount of work at the same amount of time now that they have AI. And like Clinton said, people now think that they have to use AI for things. And so that gets translated to the executives thinking we need AI for these things.
We need to replace the executives with AI. This is a whole killer fish. And when I've been on the podcast before, I'm always like, oh, hoorah. But I just want to say, like, when you look at jobs, and it's like, okay, let's look at this big company that makes movies, right? And they're like, let's replace all the creatives with AI. It's like, no. Let's replace all the executives and the accountants and them with AI, because AI is better at dealing with numbers and large data sets. AI is bad at creative stuff. All it can do is plagiarize. And it's like, unfortunately, the people who can be replaced by AI, who should be replaced by AI, are making the decisions to replace the people who can't be replaced to replace them. So it's
so-
like we completely the opposite way around. On
We also
who actually
see
needs to
like
be replaced.
the likes of like YouTube that's embracing using AI to create music. But then if you create music using AI, then it's like, no, this is not allowed.
Yeah, it has to be.
Right.
It has to be our music.
Yes,
right?
which is just like it muddies the waters, and I think both of you make good points. Is that we're replacing humans with these bots that are not very clever, that are largely unproven. I don't know if you guys know about the nuclear football that Sam Altman carries around.
Yeah.
No.
So
I know about the real nuclear football.
He's seen carrying this bright blue backpack around, and the legend is that it's a kill switch for the data centers where OpenAI runs.
Okay.
So that if OpenAI or ChatGPT becomes too intelligent and rogue,
Oh, if it goes Skynet.
yeah, he
Okay.
can kill it. Right?
Oh
So
my
that's
goodness.
the theory.
Okay.
But I think that as very sci-fi as that is,
Yeah.
I think there is some sort of merit to worrying about that.
Yeah.
That if an AI was tasked with removing inefficiencies from planet Earth, us squishy two legs would be
Do you
would
do
be
you
the
guys
first
know
to
what
go.
a SCRAM system is?
No.
So talking about nuclear stuff, a SCRAM is an emergency shutdown of a nuclear reactor. You know
Okay.
what SCRAM stands for?
No.
Safety Control Rod Axeman. Because when they were doing these tests, they had, I believe, the rod that they had was like boron or something that would
Yeah.
stop the reaction. The roommate, I don't know how true this is, but there's a guy with an axe, and the axe was to cut a rope that hold the boron rod, and the boron rod would fall into the reactor and stop the reaction.
Right.
So now this is all automated or whatever, and it's like you're telling me this guy's got a little blue Hello Kitty backpack, and it's like, well, you'll switch it off. I don't think that's true, first of all. I think that's just all like marketing hoo-ha, but it's like, there's a guy in the data center probably
Also-
that has an axe, or he's probably just got the sprinkler system to like,
Yeah, just water at the.
yeah, or just like you just turn off the cooling system and it cooks itself.
Yeah.
It's like, is this really happening,
also,
or is
like,
it just?
As far as I understand of generative AI and large language models, it's not possible for it to become too smart, right?
Yeah. So I mean, so all it is it's just passing data that it has.
It's a very complicated logic tree. And a lot of people don't understand that when you ask ChatGPT, like, write me a prose story about a chair, it's not writing a full, like, 3-act structure and everything. It's writing one word, and then it's predicting the next word, and it's
Yeah.
predicting the next word. And as far as we understand, that's not how real intelligence works. When you're saying a sentence, your mind has already thought about the end of the sentence. It's not thinking, this is the next word in my sentence. So right now, there's a complete disconnect between the way these large language models work and the way real intelligence works. And again, that's a whole other theory about this. This isn't real AI. And then it's like, oh, this is an AI. But then what you're thinking about is a general AI or an, so it's not smart yet. But I think if we found out about it, we'd be like, oh, it gained sentience overnight. We're all damned. So, yeah.
Right. So speaking of job losses, I think it's pertinent to address something that I think it's rather important is layoffs that have happened over the last 2 years, really. Started in 2022, and throughout this year, we've seen even more layoffs. And some of them are brought about because of AI. Some of them are just brought about because of the fact that when we went into the pandemic in 2019, we went into the pandemic like it was a choice. But when the pandemic hit in 2020, lots of companies saw massive amounts of growth, including Netflix, places like Zoom, Microsoft,
Amazon.
Meta. All these companies saw massive surges in use. And they went on a hiring spree to kind of cater to this need, expecting that we would all be indoors for years and years and years at this point. And then that never actually happened.
Yeah, people, as soon as the lockdowns ended, people left the
People
house.
went home. People left their homes.
I also wanted. How much of that was real growth? How much of it was the government was handing out free money?
Well, I mean, so when I say growth, there was massive interest in these
There,
services.
there was lots of money coming in.
Yeah.
I think that's the most diplomatic way of saying it.
So one example is Amazon, right? AWS. Their cloud computing stuff exploded during the pandemic because everyone needed data, right?
everyone needed to be digitalized.
Because everyone needed to go online, everyone needed to do the digital transformation. We're going to throw a buzz term around there. And they started making bank. Microsoft too with Azure. They started making bank. So then that's what you're saying. Then they started hiring kind of, to make sure that there was someone there.
So they could cater to these massive amounts of customers.
So there was real money coming in, right?
But I think part of this problem is, and it's something that I've been thinking about for many years at this point, is Silicon Valley has an obsession, or rather a belief, that growth is infinite. Like if you look at somebody like Facebook or Meta, as it's now known, Meta seems to have this hunger to sign up every single human to its platforms, right? It wants all 8 billion of us humans using a Meta product, which is not really viable. Because there are going to be people who just don't want to be a part of that. There are going to be people who prefer using another platform. It's the same as, like, to circle back to Twitter, like Elon Musk thinking that X is going to be an app where everybody's going to discuss everything. Twitter was never that place. Twitter was, even before Musk, even at its prime, Twitter was never a place that was a popular destination online. It was sort of a niche thing for journalists and activists and people who were just looking to post memes. It was that sort of space, and it was never sort of a global town square, as Musk says. And we've seen this here in South Africa, where what happens online does not translate into the real world. Yeah. Where a party like the Economic Freedom Fighters, the EFF, enjoy a lot of support online. That support doesn't translate into votes in the real world. There was the Capitalist Party of South Africa, the Purple Cows. They had massive amounts of support during the last election, and that never translated into votes for
That's
them.
where the whole joke about the CIC of Twitter comes in.
Yeah.
They're calling Julius Malema the CIC of Twitter because he's the president of Twitter, because that's where he gets his votes, right?
I mean, obviously this can change over time, but I mean, what happens in the real world and what happens on Twitter are two very different things. And from my experience, talking to people who aren't on Twitter, man, people just don't care. Like, people still think Elon Musk is the greatest person because he's launching rockets and reusing them, which is great, right? I mean, SpaceX does some cool stuff. Starlink does some cool stuff. Tesla does some cool stuff, I guess, except for the Cybertruck, which is hideous. But like, people don't really care what's happening on Twitter. They don't care that it's anti-Semitic and full of hate and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But it just doesn't translate into the real world. And I think that that's the problem with this infinite growth thing, is that tech executives, big tech executives especially, are so obsessed with the idea that everybody loves their app because they have 100 million people using it or 1 billion people using it. And that's just not the case.
Well, it's a problem of the tech industry, but it's also a problem, just like, again, I always bring up this, it's like late stage capitalism, right? All the growth that could be had is mostly already been had, and now they're like, where can we squeeze people for more?
Yeah.
And
so usually the answer for that is overseas, right? So with Netflix, for an example, they've reached saturation basically.
Yeah.
There's no one else in America who can subscribe to Netflix. Right?
Yeah.
They've done. All of them are there.
Well, I'm sure there's a couple of few, but it's a handful of people. Yeah. It's a very small percentage of people. So you look elsewhere, you expand to other countries, and we see Netflix trying to push like localized content in other regions to try and get people to pick up.
That's what happened with the password stuff, right? They were so entrenched in the area in the US, and like you said, everyone who would be subscribed was subscribed. So now they're thinking, okay, but now how can we squeeze these people for more money? Oh, let's stop password sharing. Let's increase the price. And even YouTube did it, and we might get to it later when we talk about ad blocking and stuff like that. But it's like, okay, everybody who's paying for YouTube Premium is paying for it. They want it. So now let's go after the free people, make the ad experience worse, and really clamp down on ad blockers. It's like when you can't grow naturally, like Brendan said, they're so after growth. When you can't grow naturally, you have to think of ways to grow unnaturally. Yeah. And usually that's by squeezing your consumer and creating a worse product and charging more for it.
But the other problem with this insane kind of pursuit of growth is that eventually when the growth doesn't come, you have to cut.
Yeah, but it's always the people at the bottom and in the middle who are being cut.
I mean, recently there was a report from IGN on Bungie, the we were talking about in the office earlier, about the developers of Destiny and Destiny 2, and they recently had to do layoffs They were among the more recent companies that announced layoffs. And one of the things of the report is that before doing layoffs, before having to get to the layoffs, Bungie started cutting all their expenses, including bonuses, end of the year bonuses, for the
Travel,
employee.
free, like classes. I mean,
Yeah.
like employee wellness sort of stuff, right?
Just things that attracts you to a company,
Yeah.
right? All the bonuses, basically.
Yeah, the perks.
But the one thing that they refused to cut in the least were the high salaries for the executives.
Yeah.
And bonuses. Because it's so ridiculous. Every company is like, oh, we don't know if we can do bonuses this year. It's been a rough year. And then it's just assumed that the executives get bonuses even if the company's performing poorly. I don't understand. A bonus, just like the dictionary definition, is something you get for doing well, right? And they're like, okay, we're getting a bonus even though the company made negative $200 million. It's like, what are you talking about? It's so funny, sorry. The older generation is like, all participation trophies and everything. They're like, I know my company lost 200 billion under my leadership, but I still want a bonus. It's like, that's a participation trophy. Sorry,
Yeah.
Brendan, go ahead.
So I think also I just want to highlight that 2023 has been one of the best years for video games. We've had some of the best titles released. If you play video games, there is something great that was released this year for you.
Yeah.
But we also had the highest number of layoffs that I've seen in forever. Like just so many video game companies culling staff en masse. And it's really depressing, especially when it's people that are considered like not important. And I'm not saying that they're unimportant. Like I think people like quality assurance are incredibly important to video games. People like community management teams are incredibly important to games because you need to be able to converse. You need that go-between between the developers and fans of your game. There's this fantastic streamer that I found recently. His name is Thor. He previously used to work at Blizzard, so he gives a lot of insight into video game development at a AAA studio. And the stuff that he reveals is just ridiculous. He's got his own video game development company. They're called Pirate Software. Great name. But I think he highlights a lot of the problems with the video game industry and development and the disconnect that there is between players, developers, and executives.
Yeah.
Like these are three different entities that all have different expectations, all have different goals, and there's just this massive disconnect. And to see all these layoffs of people that have worked really, really hard, but at the same time you see Microsoft spending $69 billion to acquire Activision Blizzard.
Why don't they use some of the money they spend on AI to pay people?
It's
Cool,
just
buddy.
it's ridiculous. So I'm hoping that next year we see a bit more sanity coming to the world of technology, and we don't have as many layoffs of people.
I don't think that's going to happen, Brendan.
So-
I think it's going to get worse every single year.
So, I mean, it might be. We'll see what 2024 brings. But if you want to get like a big picture of exactly what the tech industry kind of felt with layoffs this year, there's a great tracker online called layoffs.fyi. You can just Google that. They've been kind of highlighted by Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal and stuff. So they're a legitimate kind of data set or like I don't know, a
Data tracker.
Yeah, a collection of data. And so far in 2023, according to this tracker, 256,499 employees have been let go from the
That's too
And you know
much.
what's crazy about that? Because it's an American thing. I think in South Africa, every other headline is like unemployment rate, unemployment rate, unemployment rate. The employment rate in America is incredibly high. Why? Because a lot of people have multiple jobs. And it's like they say there's a labor shortage. Like, no, there's a payment shortage because you're not paying these people enough. And because there's no unions and stuff like that, then they get fired. They just get laid off with no thing. People unionize, please.
Don't say that. It's a dirty
Well, what do you
word.
mean don't say that? Who's going to come after me?
Right. Let's move on to another big loss for 2024, NFTs and the metaverse.
Oh, no.
Or collectively Web3.
Oh,
How much have you guys
no.
heard about Web3 this year?
More than I wanted to.
but less than you hoped.
It's all nonsense.
I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't heard much about the metaverse.
Not as much as a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, a year ago. Like in 2021 and 2022, I think the metaverse was the technology du jour for a lot of companies. And I never really got it. I'll be honest. I thought NFTs were dumb.
'Cause
I
they
thought
are.
that having JPEGs of mutant apes was not very clever.
Because it isn't.
And especially when you can just right-click Save As.
Which you should.
And it seems that everybody cottoned on because NFTs kind of became useless this year. Or not useless, worthless. Some that sold for massive sums of money are now selling for like tens or at least $100 at the higher end. Jack Dorsey's first tweet, setting up my Twitter, is infamously now worthless. After somebody spent like $300,000 on it, and now it's a worthless JPEG. Well done. And we've just seen this massive decline in the metaverse in Web3.
95% of NFTs are now worthless.
Yeah.
95%.
I mean, it's not just that though. It's also just this idea of a metaverse where folks would strap on goggles and walk around. Like I think Meta's metaverse is probably the biggest example of that, where it was at one point Meta was reporting on it, no matter how much it was losing money. Now it's just quietly disappeared.
Did they ever add legs?
Yes, they did.
I don't believe you after they lied to
Horizon World.
You know, fool me once, eh?
The worst part about that is that for one of the trailers for like a development showcase or whatever, they added the legs after the fact.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm talking about.
Oh
They
my
lied.
God.
They said legs have arrived, and then it was actually
Like,
done in post.
Yeah, in the
as a
actual
thing.
software, the avatars don't have legs, but
Yeah.
they need to just pretend that they do.
I
Right?
need to show off my shorts, guys.
I
Come
think
on.
it just also highlights how sort of detached from reality the metaverse was from the real world. Because I don't know anybody in my life, and granted I don't know everybody in the world, but I know a fair few people across a diverse range of peoples, and none of them was talking about, I can't wait to strap a VR goggle set to my head to work.
I mean, do you guys even remember when they were talking about? I remember this one MTN press release. It was like MTN purchases a virtual. Land
yes,
or
yeah.
something,
I
right?
get so many emails like that. My brain has filtered them out when I read them.
But like, this was a thing that people were actually considering, right?
Yeah, spending lots of
It's
money on.
all a grift. Okay, I have to say my point. So when we went from the normal web to the web 2.0, it was a huge shift, and it was done in good faith based on new technology. We had, rich text, we had embeds, we had all that stuff, right?
It was like the birth of the creator
It was the
economy, right?
birth of the modern internet, right? Web 3.0 is a term hijacked by shysters to sell their snake oil.
Yeah.
It's all worthless nonsense, and the only people who came out of it good was the shysters who robbed people blind. When you saw Paris Hilton on Jimmy Kimmel trying to sell you NFTs, how could you see that and not know it was a scam? Not just hers, all of it. How could you see Paris Hilton and Jimmy Kimmel trying to sell NFTs and not know it was nonsense? How? Come on. Come on.
That's FUD, Clinton.
You're not just saying the
FUD.
quiet. You're not just saying the quiet part out loud. You're standing on a soapbox with a loudspeaker and saying, "I want to steal your money." Come on. I mean,
Yeah.
That's the other thing with this whole thing is that a lot of these people like Paris Hilton and I think Eminem or Justin Bieber.
there's so many of them
But
did
a lot of
nonsense.
them are not-
Also, I think I read the story of Justin Bieber's he had one like for 42 million, something
Yeah.
like that, and that's also now worthless. So
a lot of these celebrities were also grifted themselves.
no. They were doing the grifting. Maybe one or two of them got legitimately hoodwinked,
Yeah.
but most of them, a lot of them were getting paid to promote.
Like the polls.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, a
Who
lot
was
of
the
them are-
guy who did the one about courage? Matt Damon. Come on, dude. Oh my god.
The Binance.
Do you remember?
Not Binance.
Do you remember?
Crypto.com, that's what it was.
No, who did Larry David do the advert for?
Crypto.com.
Oh my gosh. And he came out there looking good because even though he was in the advert to promote the thing,
was like,
he was playing a part of a person saying this is nonsense.
Yeah.
So he had the best of both worlds. He got all the money from being a shyster, and I don't really forgive him for any of that. Me a little nobody. But also because of the character in that show saying this isn't good and this isn't going to catch on, he came out looking good in that. Oh my God.
Well, it's been nice to see a relative silence around Web3 and sort of the decline in that. Before we get to something else, though, I want to just jump ahead and talk about streaming. because I think 2023 was kind of a big year for live streaming, and I'm talking here specifically around games. As we know, Twitch has been around for many, many years at this point.
Don't you mean Justin TV?
Justin TV became Twitch.tv. But this year we saw a relatively new entrant entering the space in Kick, which is not affiliated with Stake. I have to say that for legal reasons.
What?
But technically, they are. There's a lot of connections between the two companies that kind of make. Come on. You guys are separate.
Yeah.
Come on. And Kick has kind of become a really popular destination for content creators because it offers a larger share of money.
Okay.
So Kick takes 5%, you, the streamer, take 95%.
Okay.
Is that of
Whereas-
adverts or is it
Yeah, so revenue. I mean,
all revenue?
subscribers
Okay.
and stuff, right?
Sorry, I'm asking because I'm not too familiar
Yeah,
with this.
Twitch, there was the famous 70-30 split that some creators had. That's not the case. It's now a 50-50 sort of split, which is kind of not very nice, which is why we've seen so many people flocking to Kick. Have you guys ever watched a stream on Kick or visited Kick.com?
I have indeed many
No,
times.
I have not.
Okay, so the first thing you'll notice when you visit Kick.com is that there is a lot of gambling,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, that's where all the money's coming from.
And a lot of the exclusive contracts that Kick has signed with the likes of Tfue, who's the latest one, XQC, another, Trainwrecks, who is sort of like an investor, an early adopter person. A lot of those contracts require that those guys play gambling games on stream. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we don't have public knowledge, but a lot of them, the amount of time they spend playing gambling games is it's questionable.
Well, hold on. Don't they have to disclose if they're paying something for money?
I mean, if it's in a contract, then
The
there's an
FTC
NDA.
has
I've
to.
signed an NDA. I
The
can't declare
FTC
that.
has to look into
Well, you
that.
see, this is the problem, though, is that Kick is not, I don't believe, is not a US company. And if you are a US citizen and you have to stream gambling on Kick, you're not allowed to do it. What's his name now? Nick Merckx. So Nick Merckx signed with Kick now recently as well, and he has explicitly said that he would have to do gambling streams, but he'd have to leave the country in order to do that, which is ridiculous. But I mean, get that dough, yo. And yeah, so Kick is kind of worming its way into the streaming scene, but I do wonder how sustainable it is.
Well, I mean, sorry, just not to cut you off there. Do you know how much money these gambling things make? I mean, you can power through a lot of problems with cash alone.
Yeah.
And if what you're telling me is, okay, a lot of this money is coming from gambling, they can just power through. Sorry, Louis, I cut you off there.
No, I was just going to say, on the topic of the sustainability, you only have to be on Kick for 5 minutes before you realize that it's basically the Wild West of streaming.
Yeah, I mean, you
There
could
is-
do anything.
So Twitch has a lot of rules, and YouTube has a lot of rules. There's certain content you can't have. But you go to Kick and you see sleeping naked on my bed for 2
Yeah.
hours, 3 hours, things like that. They're like hot tub streams galore. You know what I mean?
So I think the reason that we're seeing this on Kick is because it's still early days, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure in the early days of Justin TV, you'd find stuff
Oh,
like
yes.
that. But
Yeah.
as you get bigger, and we know now Twitch is owned by Amazon. It is an Amazon property. They also use Amazon's technology to
Use your
stream,
Twitch Prime
right?
sub.
And Kick is also apparently using the same back end that Twitch uses, right? So it's still using AWS infrastructure. And the problem with this is, as the kind folks at Gab and other alternative social media found out, is that if you host content on there that is in contravention of Amazon's terms of service, they can kick you. But they can kick you from that service. So I think that Kick right now is enjoying a bit of freedom because nobody has pointed out, hey, there's a lot of illegal stuff that's happening on this website. And the moment Amazon sees that and recognizes that this is probably not good for our brand, or it's not making us as much money as we would hope it would make, Kick's day in the sun starts to end, and it just becomes more and more like Twitch.
Right.
And it's all good and well to have this this dream of creating this platform where you can do anything and there are no rules. But if you're using other people's infrastructure, which arguably you have to, I don't know any single business right now who could start today and build out the sort of infrastructure that Google, Amazon, Microsoft have without significant investment. And I'm talking trillions of investment. You just have to use their services, and as a result, your rules need to reflect the rules from those platforms. It's very messy, so I don't know how long Kik does it. Clinton, to your point about that gambling money can pay for a lot of stuff, sure, but eventually that money runs out, and I'm pretty sure Stake isn't looking at bankrolling Kik forever.
I don't know.
Not that Kik and Stake are linked entities, they are not.
I think maybe, again, I don't want to harp on this too much. I think maybe you guys are underestimating how much money gambling makes, and also how much regulation has happened in the past few years that has made gambling advertising more popular. And it's not just in South Africa. I've been speaking to some people in Australia and in England, and in those two places especially, there's been a flood of gambling advertising. And I sometimes go on like communities that are specifically for those two countries, and very common posts on there. Just people saying, I'm sick of these gambling adverts. And why are there so many adverts? Because they're making so much money. It's weird, you think of advertising as something you do to get money, but a lot of the times these companies already have the money, and then they're advertising more. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're talking about that, it's so prevalent on the platform, I think they can just go, they can continue. And if people need to move out of America or whatever to keep the money flowing, I think it will keep flowing.
Just as a note, because we're talking about gambling,
yes.
Just if you do have a problem with gambling, maybe talk to somebody about it. There are resources you can use. You can contact 0800 006 008, and that is a responsible gambling helpline. It can ruin lives. It's a real problem. So if you have an issue with gambling, maybe avoid Kik. Yeah, don't watch Kik. Just don't.
We'll get off this topic now. Just it makes me real riled up that if you're an adult and you passed a certain age and your brain's fully developed or whatever, all that stuff. I'm not a doctor or whatever. You can watch a gambling advert. You can say, I know the risks and I know the things, and I've made this money at my legitimate job that pays taxes and everything. My problem is that a lot of this stuff is being seen by children.
Yeah.
And I'm really not a Puritan who's like, think of the children. Why won't somebody think of the children? But when it comes to gambling, it's ridiculous. And I just want to point the people in the direction of a video by People Make Games, who covered gambling and how it relates to video games, and some games that are marketed towards children that have gambling. And they get introduced to this younger and younger through stuff like loot boxes, which, again, loot boxes are gambling. I don't care how many people are like, it's not gambling, it's surprise mechanics, or it's gambling, right?
Surprise mechanics.
And it's really insidious. Gambling in itself is already predatory, and it's double or triply predatory when it's children are seeing it. And if I say it is explicitly marketed towards children, that's libel. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's so much gambling advertising that children can't see it. And if you go on Twitch is marketed towards the younger audience. And if you're saying Kik is a competitor to Twitch, that means it's also targeted towards a younger audience. So,
I was going to add that the problem that Clinton's pointing out to, it's only becoming worse and worse that kids get exposed to this stuff. With the likes of Roblox and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's...
I think the video I'm talking about, People Make Games, I think the gambling thing was connected to Roblox. I don't want to say for certain, but they did mention
maybe don't let your kids play the Roblox.
Or the Fortnite.
Well, at least in Fortnite, it's like...
Barbie Adventures.
No. I'm just saying, at least in Fortnite, right? Kids like...
Hypertext.
No. They're like, I love Goku. I want a Goku skin. Yeah. You can just buy the Goku skin.
Yeah, you don't have to buy
100 loot boxes. Like, at least... Like, I don't have children. Don't plan to have children. But it's like, if they're like, I'm going to play FIFA now, I'd be like, oh no, because that has terrible loot box mechanics. I'd be like, are you sure you don't want to play Fortnite? Which hurts my heart to even think, but it's like, it's the less of two evils. Anyway.
Right. The one we didn't mention, though, is YouTube. And while YouTube does have live streaming, it's not very good. That's all I'm going to say on that.
VTubers.
Yeah, no, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about ad blockers on YouTube. So I subscribe to YouTube Premium, which I highly recommend everybody does because A, it removes adverts, B, it gives you access to YouTube Music, and C, I don't have a C.
It supports creators directly instead of them having to depend on
YouTube
adverts.
claims.
Yes. So YouTube this year, around the middle of the year, actually, folks started to notice that they were being blocked from watching YouTubes. They were getting warnings rather, that after they had watched 3 videos with an ad blocker enabled, they wouldn't be able to watch any more videos. And that war against ad blockers has seemingly ramped up to ridiculous heights at this point. We're now sitting at a point where YouTube has admitted that it is throttling users who are watching content for free on their platform. So there was like a delay before the video would load, which just adds friction to users. And I think it's worth talking about advertising online in general because it's become very pervasive. I think, not to toot our own horn here, and I'm very biased in this regard, but I think our advertising on hypertext is very well thought out. It's not in your face. It's not trying to interfere with the stories
not
that
breaking
you're
up
reading.
the text.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So I think like we've done a pretty good job of handling our advertising on the site after many years. And I mean, we've gotten it wrong in previous years. But I think that what's happening is we're seeing this massive push towards advertising based off of what we discussed earlier with the infinite growth that big tech has. We're just seeing more and more advertising coming on. The likes of Twitter, right? We're seeing advertisers leaving there, but you still see some of the most bizarre adverts because they need to sell advertising space to keep these services running. And unfortunately, where once you could run a couple of ads and pay for your hosting bill every month, now you need to pay. You need to run hundreds of ads in order to pay your hosting bills every month, and it's just become a bit extreme.
Yeah.
So I use a browser called Brave, and the reason I use Brave is because its ad blocker is one of the best that I've used. People can tell me about Origin and all these other ad blockers, but Brave is by far the best ad blocker I've used. It works with YouTube. It also works with pretty much every other website on the web. And what is great about Brave is you can set sites to be safe, so that they will display ads. So the websites that you prefer to visit, you can watch their advertising. And I understand that what I'm saying here is kind of tantamount to stealing, or some people might see it as stealing from content creators. But man, there's just too many adverts.
Yeah.
There's just too many.
So what I do is I use regular old Chrome. I know there's better options. It's just like this point, I'm just too stuck in my ways to change. I use an ad blocker, but all the places I support, I turn the ad block off. I literally do. I know a lot of people are like, I do it, and then they don't. I do. You can go look at my green list. The sites I use all the time, I green list. YouTube, like Brendan said, I have a YouTube Premium account. I'm happy knowing that, as far as I understand it, the money's going directly to the creators based on my watch time, and I have a lot of watch time, which is why I also recommend YouTube Premium. And then on mobile, I think mobile is where it's the worst.
Yeah.
Because you have less space, and they're like, how can we force 100 ads into a 6-inch screen?
Also, there's I want to say there's no ad blockers for mobile.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Opera Mobile has built-in ad blocker, and it works fantastically. And I don't want to call out a specific site. There's a site that I go to, a Lego site, that acts as a database for all Lego. And I go to it to like, how many pieces did this one set have? And I'd go do it because they do the best in terms of doing that. And their site is unusable on mobile. Unusable. And they would say, if you make an account, right, you either get less ads or you get no ads. I was like, okay, but on mobile, you usually get logged out automatically. Even sites that are really good at keeping you logged in, you get logged out. And it's like, I understand, like Brendan said, people underestimate how expensive it is to run a website just for your hosting fees. People also underestimate things like a database website where they have high quality images, they have thousands upon thousands of images. It's a lot of money, right? But there's a huge difference between I'm supporting you because I use you so much, and how am I supposed to support you if I can't visit your website because the ads crash my browser? And I'm not being hyperbolic. I've had a desktop browser even on a high-end PC, and I've had my mobile browser crash visiting the site because of the number of ads. So it's insane. If people do want to check out a browser that has built-in ad blocker, Opera Mobile, it's fantastic. I really like Opera Mobile.
I think it just speaks to how pervasive it's become. It's too much. There are too many ads. And to your point again, Clinton, it is expensive to run a website. But I mean, it's just too much to have an ad on every scroll line of a page.
Every few sentences. And again, this is something we were talking about off air. Whenever a company says, oh, it's so expensive to do this and that, we have fees, inflation, everything. I was like, show me how much the executives are being paid. Show me that. How many bonuses did they get this year? Whenever a company says that, that's always in the back of my mind. And that always, I don't want to say it legitimizes ad blocking or whatever, but it's like you can't tell me your hosting fees are expensive when your fees for the CFO is the same amount. Yeah. It's like, is the CFO carrying all of that stuff on his back? It's like, you can't make that argument. It's pure greed.
Yeah. I also just want to... now I've just lost the thought. It just disappeared from my
Louis,
mind.
what browsers do you use?
I use Firefox. And I am the kind of bastard that would rather die than pay for YouTube Premium.
Oh man... Brendan, you and I think are the only two people who actually realize.
But it's also because I spend about 6 hours a day watching YouTube content.
YouTube Premium is the only streaming service I pay for.
Yeah.
And people are going to be like, oh, he pirates. Or no, when I want to watch something on streaming, I'll buy a month, I'll watch it all, and then I'll cancel my subscription. Yeah.
But this is the... sorry, I just remember what I wanted to say. But the idea of having a subscription for every service is also untenable.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
If we look at just streaming content, right? You have Showmax, you have Netflix, you have Amazon Prime, you have Disney Plus, you have... I don't even know.
Max, Peacock Plus, I think.
Crunchyroll.
You have...
I mean, if only somebody would think of a way to bundle all of these together, which is actually happening in the US right now. Yeah. Right? So you have Comcast partnering with Disney and Hulu and Paramount to bring all of those services to one thing.
Oh, what's it called, Brendan?
It's called cable.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is where we're going. And you can't... Especially when it comes to news websites, right? So with me, I visit multiple different websites for news. I don't just visit News24, right? So if all of the websites, locally speaking, had to start charging a subscription, I'd be bankrupt. Because, I mean, you can't tell me that, okay, it's only 15 Rand. Nobody is charging that, first off. Yeah. I don't know what a News24 subscription costs nowadays.
It's a few $100.
Yeah, a few $100. I mean, I think the best... implementation of a subscription was Daily Maverick, where you could pay what you wanted, which I think is a great model, because if you can only afford to give 15 Rand, you give 15 Rand, and you can access all their content. But that's not something that everybody can nor will do. And to justify a subscription for every single service you're using, no, man, guys. We've got to think of a better way to do this.
So there's another thing that I kind of want to talk about. When you mentioned there's so much content and stuff like that. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming. Being a person on the internet in 2023.
Yeah.
Being online. There's so much of everything. There's so many movies, so many shows, so many YouTubers, so many games, so much of everything all the time being flooded into your eyes, into your mouth, and
as Bo Burnham said, it's a little bit of everything all of the time.
All of the time, and this year I've noticed that more than any other year. And we were talking about there's so many adverts, right?
Yeah.
Of course, there's so many adverts because everyone spending more time on the internet, and it's kind of like, when are we gonna reach the point of just total content deluge, where it's just, I mean, I feel like we're getting closer. This is the Martin Scorsese nightmare that he talked about, right? That eventually everything will kind of blend together into just, you watch Avengers, then you do this and then that, and then reality TV.
Everything will be hosted in Fortnite, first of all. forget whatever Meta's doing, forget the metaverse. I think Fortnite, like, no joke, I think Fortnite is the closest we have to a fully online, like Ready Player One reality.
It's getting there.
It's so close.
I mean, they've got Rocket Racing launching soon. They've got Lego survival game.
Yeah, Fortnite's on my brain because they added Lego. So now the deal I made with the evil fairy has forced me to consume everything Lego. So now I have to play Fortnite.
But it's scary. It's scary out there, and I don't know when it's gonna end and how much more the human mind can take just all the stuff all the time.
Can I offer a suggestion of where it's going to go? Mm-hmm. Independent content creators. So I subscribe to an entertainment platform, Dropout TV. If you've ever watched a College Humor skit on YouTube, it's the folks who do that. But they have some really great quality content and I've mentioned this before in a previous episode of Hypertext Presents. I can't remember where exactly, but it was alternative streaming platforms. And that's really great, but it costs 200 Rand a month. So I know that I'm paying those creators directly. They're a very small team, and I enjoy their content, but I do foresee us going towards a place that's more like we have more Disney Pluses than we have Netflixes, where we do have the split where it's every production house has its own streaming platform, and then somebody like a Vodacom or an MTN bundles them all together and sells it to you at a special price every month.
You know what the problem with that is that I just watch too many content creators to financially support every single one of them. That's a problem of I don't work a job that pays enough, first of all. Second of all, something that annoys me is sometimes the only way to support them is in a currency that's not mine, and then I get screwed by the conversion rate. Like, I don't want to mention the specific one, but one of I think it's my favorite content creator. It's a pair of people. Again, I don't want to signal them out because, they have their own platform where you can pay them directly. So, you don't need to, it's not through Patreon, so more money is going to them instead of Patreon. Patreon's a company I don't really like, so that's good for me and everything. It's like, okay, I want to subscribe to you, but you only charge in USD. And I'm kind of being screwed by the conversion rate. And I understand that if you gave my country or my region or whatever a lower price, then people would use a VPN to get around and all of that and all of that. And again, every time they bring up their stuff, they say, please don't feel pressure and everything. But then they're also releasing content only on their platform. Yeah. They're not like some content they're releasing early, which, fair enough, but they are releasing like 2 or 3 times the amount of content that is paywalled. Yeah. And it's like, as a fan of them who I've gotten my friends into their stuff and all of that, it kind of hurts that I just cannot afford. It's like the conversion rate is like 200 Rand a month. I cannot afford 2,400 Rand a year to watch your content. That is 200 Rand a month is like 2 or 3 times the price of YouTube Premium. Yeah. It's like, I understand what you're doing. And it's funny, I can't explain their name and everything, but they're saying for the price of like a small meal, you could get the subscription service. So I was like, maybe in your country, where you're a first world country, not in my country. For the amount you're asking, I can have fillet steak. So it's a quagmire. It's like,
it definitely is a quagmire. For that amount that you said, the 200, how much was it? The yearly.
So it's about 200 Rand a month.
And the yearly amount?
No, there is no yearly
but
saving.
I mean, if for every month that you pay...
Well, 2,400 Rand
for
a
that
year.
amount of cash, you can get an OnlyFans creator to send you a message.
Wow. Wow, he's speaking from experience here,
what
dude.
Louis is saying is start an OnlyFans. The last thing I want to talk about while we're talking about all this advertising and subscription services that are coming online, the last thing I want to talk about is the locking down of the internet that we've seen this year. And I might be elaborating a little bit here, but for me, the lockdown of APIs from both Twitter especially and Reddit have been very concerning
Can't
for
believe
me.
they touch
So
Reddit.
if you don't know what an API is, it's an application programming interface. That's what it stands for. And it basically allows two services to talk to one another. So in the context of Twitter, if we look at an application like Hootsuite, which allows you to post a whole bunch of content to different social media platforms without having to visit all of those social media platforms. So what an API lets you do is it lets you use a Hootsuite interface to post to Facebook or to Twitter or to whoever it may be. But this year, we saw Elon Musk, one of his first decisions was to lock down the API and put a price tag on it.
A huge price tag.
So generally how an API will work is that you as a service will call another company's API. That's the lingo that's used. You'll call it, and then it will send that data to you. And that costs bandwidth for the company who you are calling. Sort of like a phone call, right? Except it's reversed. The person is paying, it's a reverse phone call.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So what's it called? A collect call?
Yeah, collect call. But companies have realized that there were some miscreants who were using this API for nefarious purposes, or maybe just abusing the fact that it was free.
Yeah.
And in the case of Twitter, these miscreants were researchers and academics and scientists,
The real scum of the earth.
dastardly people who were using the likes of Twitter or Twitter's API to conduct research on Twitter because you can use certain elements within Twitter to kind of draw conclusions, right? You can see like what is trending at the time, why it's trending, how accounts are connected to one another, how accounts that are tweeting similar things are connected to one another. And with Reddit, and I think this is the more important one, Reddit's mobile presence sucks. It always has. Because it was built as a website, right? It was built as a web interface. Correct, Clinton? Initially?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't want to say one word.
I
I'm
am
not
sure.
entirely sure. Okay.
I was just looking for
Sorry.
reassurance.
I don't know. Sorry.
But it was originally built as a sort of a forum, right? In the early days of the internet. So it didn't translate well into mobile, especially when mobile started to come about.
Well, kind of, but I think you'll get to it. But then third-party companies
Yes.
made adaptations, and they worked great.
Yes. Well,
So
that's what
it was
that's what I
never.
was getting to.
It was never a problem with the concept. It was a problem with the execution.
Yeah. And kind of the Reddit owners were like, we'll focus on the website. And like Clinton mentioned, there were a number of third-party developers who created mobile apps for Reddit that were just fantastic, that worked really well. They were fantastic. They were amazing. And then this year, Reddit made the decision to lock down the API, which effectively killed all of those third-party apps. Those people who had spent years building up applications that some were charging a subscription for, granted, but in the wake of Reddit's terrible mobile presence, these third-party apps stepped up to the plate. And a lot of these people were doing stuff on their own in their spare time. And then Reddit was like, well, we're just going to charge you ridiculous amounts of money to access the API, effectively killing off all these third-party apps. And
Especially the smaller ones that can't afford it, you know?
and this raised concerns about kind of the openness of the internet. And I know that there's a lot of, what's the word here? Bespoke content, proprietary content that people use online. But it always felt to me like APIs were the golden goose of the internet. They were things that allowed us to be able to do certain things, allowed us to interoperably post on multiple social media. And that's just slowly not becoming the case. And we're starting to get, and if anybody works in cloud computing, they'll know this term, but we're starting to get just massive silos of content on the internet, which is terrible, because it means, like we were talking about just now, where you have to subscribe to multiple different people on multiple different platforms in order to get the whole story, right? Because we are now in a very closed-off version of the internet, as open as it still relatively is, but compared to 10 years ago, it's far more closed
people
off.
have said this before. Like, I used to visit so many websites. I had like one website for this hobby. One website for that. I used to speak to my friends on this website. I used to do this. It's like now there's just like 5 websites I visit, and I just cycle through them on my phone.
And they're
on my
all owned
laptop
by
or
the same
whatever.
3 companies.
And at least those 5 websites could talk to each other through an API, and now they're not even doing that.
It's the whole net neutrality thing, right? So we were talking about Twitch.
Yeah.
So Twitch left South Korea because they can't afford to pay the ISPs.
Yes.
Right. And in South Korea the internet is very closed off. Right. So as far as I understand, the ISPs charge each other for the traffic that they redirect to each other.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
And that isn't happening.
Network access fee is called.
Right. That isn't happening everywhere else in the world, luckily.
Yet.
Yes.
Oh.
But the problem with that is the ISPs who really pays is the customer.
Yeah.
Because they're not gonna They're not gonna just.
They're going to pass. Yeah, they're going to pass that.
pass the bill on to
pass
you.
you, yeah.
Right. And that's the thing we need to be concerned about, because that could essentially boost the ISP fee, whatever you're paying for your internet, your monthly fee. By 3 or 4 times what you pay, right? Just to access the internet. So yeah, that's a terrible kind of doomsday scenario for the future if that happens anywhere else, right?
I mean, it's also a kind of a viable scenario, something that could happen, because we are just seeing a lot of lockdown happening, not just from Twitter, but also like governments, right? If you look at in the US, earlier this year, we saw a popular adult content website deciding that it is not going to operate in Utah anymore because a bill was passed where essentially the adult content sites had to obtain proof that the viewer was over 18 years old. And the platform was like, no, that's a privacy nightmare, number one. Number two, it's a massive technical challenge. Yeah. And 3, it's just going to cost us a lot of money. No, we're not going to do it.
Rather just pull out.
Exactly. And then you look at places like Canada, where Meta just stopped posting news, stopped supporting news because it wasn't they couldn't comply with the law, or rather didn't want to comply with the law. And it's very concerning that we're getting to this point where governments are starting to catch up with the internet, and service providers and platform operators are just like, nah, we don't want to have to deal with the rules. We're just going to pull out of the country. And we start to see this anti-neutral net that's starting to happen and build and populate around us. So it's highly concerning. And moving into the rest of this decade, I think we all need to keep a close eye on how our governments, number one, are implementing rules around internet access, and how platform operators are responding to those rules, and what they are likely to do if those rules don't kind of coalesce with what they're doing. And in South Africa, I think we've seen that with the likes of Starlink, where Starlink is available in a lot of African countries, but because they're not willing to comply with the laws of our land, they're not available here. So, yeah, I mean, it's a really tough thing to pass, and we don't have a crystal ball here to see the future. But yeah, 2023 has made me very worried about this open internet that I've grown up with and how closed off it's becoming. Right. I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Always Online. It's been a very tough year, both online and offline. You'll notice we haven't mentioned things like load shedding, because that's happening in the real world. And when we're online, we're not in the real world. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Always Online. We'll have links to everything we've discussed at the bottom of this post. But for myself, Brendan Lotz, cheerio from Lee Wanzon.
Happy holidays, everybody.
And from Clinton Matos.
Bye, everybody.
Happy Xmas.